Inspired Classroom. Today, drums and how to use them in your classroom. So I've already done a webcast about different kinds of hand drums and how to play them. This one's going to be more about ideas you can actually use in your classroom. So we're going to focus on three things: building community, using drums for stretch and movement breaks, and also for classroom management. So first, building community. Anytime you bring music into your classroom, you're building community, because music is the great community builder. With the drum, though, I would suggest that you would do drum circles. Now, I've done drumming circles or percussion circles with my students over the past few years on a monthly basis, and sometimes I try to do it on a weekly basis, especially when we're focusing in a theme about building community and building teamwork. So what I do is I actually bring my students into another room in the school, wherever I can find, because I work in a modified open concept school. So having a drum circle in my classroom is not really the best idea for my neighbors. And I bring my drum, and I have available to me, because I've collected them, little percussion instruments for my students to use. And I've also been able to work out a schedule and a way for me to borrow the instruments from my music teacher that I work with at my school. So basically, where the drum comes in is this is where the leader takes a leadership role and plays what's called an ostinato. And an ostinato is a rhythmic pattern that is repeated over and over and over and over again from the beginning to the end of a piece of music. So, the ostinato can be very basic, and it just plays over and over. And then what happens is that the rest of the students who are in a circle on the floor or in chairs, what they do is they'll start coming in, playing, it's basically an improvisation, playing on their small percussion instruments. And what I do is I ask them to focus in on what their instrument is, the sounds that their instruments make, and how can that sound be utilized within the drum circle inside this ostinato that I'm playing for them. And if you don't have access to, a bunch of percussion instruments, then of course you can have them do body percussion. So they might be playing their chest, slapping their chest, tapping their legs, tapping the floor, clapping their hands, different ways that they can just make sound and add to the class's composition that they're coming up with as an improvisational piece. And the drum is basically the thread that keeps things going right to the end. And how do you end this? Because it can go on for quite a long time. First of all, don't be afraid of it being lingering on and on for a while, because the students will be engaged, and you'll start to get into a real, honest-to-goodness groove with your students. But to just count it down. So, 4, 3, 2, and you're out. And it's a really cool effect. And when you're done, the kids are going to be like, oh, that was really cool. So consider doing that for a community builder with your drum. And naturally, as you use some of the other techniques in your classroom, you're also going to start building community. For example, classroom management. For classroom management, you might use a call and response. So basically what that is that you call out a sound, and I'm going to use a smaller drum for this. You call out a sound, you could be standing anywhere in your classroom, and they repeat it back to you. Maybe you've done this before with clapping. And they clap that out there. And you can do this, and here's the trick. You can do this until everybody is truly focused. Now, if you teach in an elementary setting, you might have your drum over where the rug area or the meeting area is, and you sit down, you grab your drum, and you literally call the students over using the voice of your drum. So as you're tapping your rhythm and they're calling it back to you, they're stopping what they're doing, knowing that it's time to come over and sitting down in the circle or at the meeting area for you. Middle school, high school teachers absolutely use this as well. You have your little drum sitting on your desk. You go, you sit on your stool, you sit on top of your desk, or you stand at the wherever you want to in your room, and you start playing this and having the kids call and response back to you. Now, they might be just sitting there tapping away their fingers on the top of their desk, but they're doing it and they know that that is their cue to use this, to be focused and be ready. Yes, you can use this in middle school and high school, and the kids will grow on it, and some of them will like it right away. They might even challenge you with different kinds of rhythms as well. Now, there's also a great way to use this call and response, and Susan Riley over at Education Closet actually has a video on this as well. It's a modified call and response where you're actually tapping 4 beats of a rhythm, and while the students are calling back to you, you start doing the next 4 beats. So they're listening and playing all at once, and it's a great way to reinforce that reading comprehension, that strategy of reading where when you're reading inside your text, you are reading the words in the present, but you're also looking ahead to what is coming next. And it's a great brain builder for that type of thinking. So for example, I can start tapping out my drum, and then while you're clapping those 4 beats of rhythm, I'm continuing on. So let's try this. That can be really a challenge, but kind of cool. And what I found is instead of clapping that, but actually using a drum or using drumsticks, it's actually helpful because you can hear better what the leader is playing, so that you can actually know what you're listening for and then actually do it. Now I have some drumsticks here too. And drumsticks are great as well, and even easier to keep in your classroom. They can just sit right on the marker tray on your whiteboard. So, drumsticks, same idea. Nice and loud, crisp sound, and yet the volume is a little bit less than a drum and maybe a little less invasive on the audio space in your room, so it's not bothering your teacher neighbors as much. And finally, for movement and stretch breaks, which students need all the time, throughout the day, regardless of how old they are, and quite frankly, so do we. We need these breaks as well. And if you have a drum available to you that you can just grab and pick up and do at any point in the day, then it can be a very, very simple 5 or even less 2-minute stretch time for kids to get up, move, and then get back down, and they're better focused. Now the strategy for this with your drum is to play in a way where the students have to listen for the cues and how you're playing and move that way. Okay, so you might play really loudly, and students have to play really loud, move really loudly, or stretch really largely, and then maybe you do something really quiet. And encourage them. This is where the dance standards are also going to start to come into play, where students have to be listening for cues and responding with their bodies, different various levels of movement. So if I'm playing this, you might encourage them to get down low onto the, closer to the ground, And as you get louder, have them get up and stretch, really nice and loud. Or you might do sharp movements. Let me grab a different kind of drum here. You might play loud and sharp and have them move their arms nice and sharp. So, or the opposite of what I had suggested in the other video, coming off the drum to let the drum head vibrate. Maybe you do this and see how they start moving through the room. Kind of being in control of their bodies through the drum. Kind of interesting. Now, yes, this is something that naturally goes with elementary education. Middle school and high school, it gets a little bit more difficult for them to be moving like this. But even if you just did a brain exercise where students are allowed to just sit and imagine how they would be, or just to make their fingers move on top of their desks in the manner in which you're playing and to respond that way. It's just a little bit of a different break, couple minutes, and then you can get back focused, having something like this where you're, and then naturally go into a call and response to get them back to where they need to be, and you can even call it out and have them come back to where they need to be. So that's just a few ideas. Of course, more will probably be coming soon, and I hope you really consider taking this opportunity to go out, get yourself a drum, and start using it in your classroom. Again, I'm Elizabeth Peterson from the Inspired Classroom, and hope that got you a little bit inspired. Thank you.